Richard, we're all aware that Iran, of course, is stirring up trouble in the region. But I want to ask you about Turkey, because overnight the president of Turkey has met with the leader of Egypt, and he has said there needs to be an alliance of Islamic nations against Israel to stop what he calls Israeli expansion. Can you believe it? Can you talk to me about Turkey's involvement in this? Is this just hot air, or is this a serious threat from Turkey?
I think there's a great deal of hot air has come out of Turkey since this conflict began. And you know, even beforehand, Turkey was talking about Jerusalem belongs to us. We you know, it's Turkish territory. And of course, it was at one point the Ottoman Empire did control this entire territory, but that was in the distant past. So I think my view is that this is more than anything else is hot air. I don't think there's a real threat from Turkey against Israel. Obviously, there is diplomatically. But of course, Turkey is a member of NATO. And for Turkey to do anything aggressive against Israel would be met with, you know, considerable, I think, displeasure from the United States. As for Egypt's been playing a double game. Egypt facilitated the arming of Hamas. It allowed Hamas to bring weapons, munitions, and equipment to turn Gaza into the fortification it is today. Sometimes maybe by playing a blind eye, sometimes by openly allowing stuff through. But nevertheless, it was really because of Egypt's position that Hamas developed as it did, supplied by Iran, but allowed through by Egypt. And the IDF have destroyed, I think, my figures may not be 100% correct, but I think they've identified and destroyed around 200 tunnels crossing the border between Gaza and Egypt. I was in one of them myself a few days back inside Gaza, a tunnel that you could easily drive at least two vehicles side by side through that.
Wow.
Tunnel. And that was just one of a huge number of tunnels that have been dug by Hamas to get munitions, and not just munitions, but other equipment through the border there. And Egypt's been allowing it. And at the same time, Egypt has closed its border to refugees. There are a lot of people from Gaza who could have escaped the war through the Egyptian border, as really is required under international treaty by Egypt, and Egypt just simply refused to do so. It's one of the few times I'm aware of in history that a neighbouring country that it's at peace has completely closed off its border to refugees from a country that's at war where they're in danger.
Richard, I just wanted to ask you very quickly before we let you go, just to go back to the United States. You know, we had the horrible incident of those 6 hostages being shot under Rafah the other day. Rafah, of course, was where the Biden administration and Kamala Harris said, do not go in there, you know, leave Rafah alone. And now we have Tim Walz, who could very well be the next vice president, saying that protesters who are protesting anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, are protesting for all the right reasons. Have a listen to this here.
I think we're at a critical point right now. We need the Netanyahu government to start moving in that direction. But I think those folks who are speaking out loudly in Michigan are speaking out for all the right reasons. It's a humanitarian crisis.
Richard, with the presidential election in the U.S. basically being probably a 50-50 toss-up at this point, how much trepidation is there in Israel about the prospect of a Harris-Walz administration and what they might do in terms of reorienting even further away from Israel?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the Biden administration has been, in many ways, a mixed blessing for Israel. They have provided a great deal of support for Israel. And they've deployed a large number of assets here, and they help defend Israel. I'm talking about aircraft carrier strike groups, as well as numerous other naval and air assets. And they help defend Israel against the Iranian attack on the 14th of April. So Israel, the US has been quite strong. But on the other hand, they have been overcritical. And I think every time we've seen comments from the US which suggested a division between Israel and the United States, that's what Hamas capitalizes on. That encourages Hamas to keep fighting. And Hamas, you know, they clearly want to see not just the US, but other countries in the world, like Australia, bringing down pressure on Israel to stop the war. And it's, you know, you mentioned the Kamala or the the U.S. perspective on Rafah, trying to say this is an impossible operation, which would prove totally wrong by Israel. It's that kind of pressure and that kind of international message which encourages Hamas. And I think it's really important that if we get a Harris administration, that she doesn't continue to do that. And I think the Israelis, most of the Israelis that I speak to, are very concerned about the prospect of another administration like the Biden administration. And they're I think above all, they would like to see Trump in the White House, who, whatever anyone thinks of Trump, as far as Israel's concerned, I think he would be, many people over here believe, he would be the best president for Israel and would give them far greater support than they've had up until now.
Absolutely. Hard to argue with that. Colonel Richard Kemp, thank you so much for staying up to join us from Israel. Really appreciate it, as always.